of the Maui Desire Series and part of my pen name, Aaron Belsing. I write my normal thriller books under my name, Aaron R. Linsdau, and I've got my nonfiction books under Aaron Linsdau. Confusing? Yes, it's just how the algorithm works. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I do for dictation, because that's how I write almost all my books. So instead of typing madly on the computer, I actually use dictation. I've got a Sennheiser microphone and all this stuff, and it's hooked up to my iPad here. And what I do is I simply dictate my books, and that's what you're going to be watching. Now, one thing I want to do is share this live stream, so just a moment. All right. And that way, if anybody's on, I can actually respond. Here we go. Good. Working on it here. Here we go. Okay, hey, that looks good. Yeah, I had a massive technological meltdown today. My USB hub with Ethernet and all that died. In fact, it died on my UK research trip for my next series. Like, I was out traveling in the UK for quite a while, and I had my nice hub, and it was plugged in, and then all of a sudden it just started not working, and now it's basically not working. So that was always fun, and I was fighting that and couldn't figure that out. I was going to be live streaming about 6 hours ago. Fun. So here we are. I'm going to mute the computer here. Good. So if anybody comes on and chats. But basically what I do is I've got my outline on my iPad, and I work off my outline, then I just simply tell the story, and I use dictation. That way I can get my words in a lot faster than if I typed. This is my secret magic trick, and this is not a magic trick. I've learned this from other authors, guys that have done like 50 or 100 books, and it takes a while to get used to. So without further ado, this is going to be dictating chapter 23. The main characters are Brooke and Ethan. Brooke is the FMC or female main character, and Ethan is the MMC or main male character. And this chapter is all about reality returns. They just had their together scene, their first together scene, and now they're going to have the nice morning after. And we're into the second act, where things begin deteriorating towards the darkest night. And that's always the most interesting and challenging one to write, because I always like to write uplifting literature and text, but this is the things going wrong. But I guess you have to have the roller coaster go down to where you can have the excitement go back up. All right, get to voice app here. All right, start recording. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to be looking at my iPad. So sunlight streamed across the room as Brooke lay there, and the first light beam that caught the mirror in the room reflected and caught her across the cheek, and she felt the warmth as it began to wake her, laying in the bed. She reached out her arm, expecting to find a body there, and it wasn't. Immediately her eyes flew open, thinking this was all a dream, and she turned over, and in fact, no, it wasn't. She definitely was not in her own condo. She was in Ethan's condo, and she expected to wake up to his arms and enjoy the comfort of simply being together. But instead, all of a sudden, the aroma of deep, rich, roasted Kona coffee began floating through the bedroom, and she heard some clattering in the kitchen and thought, oh, wait a minute. Hey, this isn't so bad. This is a very domestic scene. And so she got up and put her shirt back on and got her shorts on. And then she got her her flip-flops on, and got out of bed and walked out of the room, opened the door, and there was Ethan busying himself making a breakfast with coffee. And Ethan called out, "Good morning. So good of you to join the waking world." And She laughed and said, "This isn't like me. Usually I'm up much earlier." And he said, "Well, we were a little bit busy last night. I would suspect that maybe wore you out." And Brooke shook her head and said, "Oh, you're terrible." And Ethan simply looked at her and shrugged as he continued making it. He asked her, "Do you prefer milk, half and half, or heavy cream in your coffee?" And her eyes widened. She said, "You have heavy cream?" And he said, "Of course. I make sure to have all my supplies. This coffee is pretty strong, so sometimes I enjoy it with a little bit of heavy cream. Got to be careful though; it does pack on the pounds." And he patted his he patted his abs as though he was worried about it. And she looked at him and just simply shook her head. He walked over to her and handed her a steaming mug of coffee, and she smelled it and inhaled the aroma. And as she inhaled the aroma, her eyes closed, and she just envisioned herself doing this every morning. She walked over and chose the heavy cream and just put a little splash in there. And he asked, "Would you like a little bit of a morning snack? I do have to go to work, um, but you're certainly welcome to enjoy yourself here, or I'm not exactly sure what you have planned. Honestly, I didn't ask." And Brooke thought for a moment and she said, "Honestly, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do today. Truth be told, there's lots of stuff waiting for me back in the continental and the lower 48, and I have no idea what I'm really going to do." That's a tough one. And Ethan said, "Well, you can decide what you want, but if you want to have a breakfast, I'm going to make a classic Hawaiian breakfast." And she asked, "Oh, what's that?" And Ethan said, "Well, spam with eggs and a little bit of spices and cheese." "Really? That's actually a thing here?" "Oh, absolutely. You don't know fried spam? You've never tried it?" She said, "It sounds a little bit weird." "Oh, don't worry about that. Once you get past the fact that it does come out of a steel can, it's actually really good." He leaned over and kissed her, and she just simply accepted it like it was something they'd done for a decade. And he invited her to go out onto the lanai and just enjoy the morning as the sun peeked over the horizon and shot sunlight sparkling off the water. So she walked over to the through the huge sliding glass window and just leaned on the stainless steel railing, the steel cool on her arms as the cup continued to steam, and she just sipped at it as she heard Ethan Ethan's machinations in the kitchen getting everything ready. In the distance, she heard her phone buzz once, twice, and she just stood there staring out into the ocean. And in her mind, her natural reaction was quickly, "Who's that? What's it going on?" And she noticed she had programmed her phone to have different buzzes, and that was the buzz of her daughter. She knew she needed to answer and call her back just to let her Angeline know that she was alive. So she sighed and dropped her shoulders a bit, walked over and into the bedroom and looked at her phone. And sure enough, Angeline was asking in a text message, "Mom, are you there? Are you alive? Is everything okay?" And Brooke thought about blowing it off for a moment, but she didn't want to stress out her daughter. So she found a coaster on the nightstand of Maui and set the cup on the coaster, and then picked up her phone and just keyed in a message. "Yes, sorry, I've been quite busy, and I will call you soon, but everything's okay, don't worry." She punched send, set the phone down, and before she could walk away, the phone buzzed again, and she was just about to pick up her coffee, and she looked at the phone, and the message said, "Okay, please let me know what you're up to, because you're starting to stress me out." Brooke thought about it for a while, and she said to herself that, "I love my daughter, but she is such a worrywart. She's more the mom in this relationship than I am sometimes." She picked up her coffee and then walked out to the room and heard the sizzling and clattering of pans in the kitchen. she watched Ethan as he scurried around making eggs and cooking with the sizzling sound of Spam. And she never had tried it, so she walked over and she looked at it. And even though it was rectangular, the smell filled her nostrils. And she said, "Does that taste as good as that smells?" And Ethan looked back at her and winked, like, "You have no idea what you're in for. This is a super treat." So he said, I'll be done in about 10 minutes here. So Brooke walked back out to the lanai and just sat herself down in one of the seats and set her cup of coffee and kicked up her legs on the other chair and just sat and stared at the ocean, enjoying the moment and especially the memories of the night before. She thought about how Ethan made her comfortable and put a lot of effort into making sure it was a memorable evening for both of them, and she really appreciated that. Most men in her experience had only focused on themselves, and she was just an afterthought. So having someone actually focus on her experience for once was quite a different world. And about 10 minutes later, as promised, Ethan brought out a plate with shining stainless utensils and a cloth napkin, and she said, "Ooh, is this the white glove Michelin star experience?" And he laughed again. He said, "No, not quite. Just remember, when it all comes down to it, this is Spam out of a can. But please, dig in." They set the plates there, said a moment of thanks, and then Brooke tentatively sliced into the Spam with her fork, or with her knife and fork, and she picked it up, eyed it a little bit, and before she was going to put it in her mouth, Ethan said, "Try that straight away if you don't mind, and then break the egg, the sunny side up egg into it, and then swirl it around. That changes the flavor completely." She closed her eyes for a moment, unsure if it would be good, took a bite, and began crunching the crispy outer and then the warm, soft, mushy center. And she said, "Oh my gosh," as she put her hand over her mouth. "This is a bit hot, but it tastes so good. It is salty though." And Ethan said, "Yeah, that's part of the magic is when you sweat so much here, you need that salt, so it actually works pretty well." And then she took another slice, and she followed Ethan's lead in that he used the fork to simply slice up the Spam instead of a knife, because she discovered it was more than soft enough to do that. So she sliced up another and smashed the egg and swirled it around, and then the dripping yellow yolk caught a glistening ray of sunlight and sparkled as it dripped on her plate. And she looked at that and she thought, "For Spam, this is awfully artistic." She raised it to her mouth and leaned over so she didn't drip anything on the t-shirt, the Cherry Blossom Festival Washington, D.C. cherry t-shirt that she borrowed from Ethan, and took a bite. Again, she chewed, and again, just like before, she was shocked. And this time she finished before asking. She said, "How do you make such simple food taste so good?" And Ethan said, "Oh, it must be one of my superpowers." They continued chatting about the morning and where he bought the Spam and what she might do that day. And then as she was halfway through her breakfast, she heard her phone buzz again, but this time it had the generic buzz, and she knew who that was. She looked back over her shoulder several times, and Ethan said, "Well, don't worry if you need to." He looked over at her and said, "Don't worry if you need to go get that, please. And you've got your entire life to run. I know you have business to do in the States, so you know, feel free to go get it." And she said, "No, I know who that is. I'm not going to respond, or at least respond yet. It's a recruiter that's been after me, and honestly, I've got enough money for now, but I do eventually need a job." And Ethan nodded as he took another bite out of his egg yolk covered Spam and chased it with a swig of coffee and said, yeah, that can be a challenge. I know, trying to figure out a new job. You didn't mention that you're in between jobs. And she said, yeah, I ended up getting laid off from the last one. I had a big corporate buyout. And of course, half of us were on the naughty list, so we got chopped. But they paid me such a nice payout that it was easy for me to come to Hawaii. As Ethan continued eating his food and looking out, he noticed that Brooke was just a little bit detached. And he said, he looked at her and said, are you okay? And he said, oh yeah, with you, no problem, of course. It's just the entire world seems to be knocking on my door nonstop. And even when I'm 3,000 miles away, I just can't escape. Ethan nodded and didn't bother saying anything because he had the same challenges in his businesses. So they continued to work on breakfast. And then once they finished, Ethan took the plates in. He said, don't worry, I've got it taken care of. Just sit and enjoy the remnants of your coffee there. So she continued to sit there as he clattered around and loaded the dishwasher, and then came back out after another moment, and he kicked his legs high up on the stainless steel railing and asked her, what do you think you're going to do? I have to take off here relatively shortly. You are welcome to stay here, or if you want to run around the island, I can give you some ideas. And she said, oh, that's so nice of you, but I definitely want to go get a change of clothes. And then if you've got some sightseeing ideas, I'm more than happy to check them out. And he said, absolutely. I'll write a few down and I'll show you on your phone. So they finished up chatting about how the weather was going to be, because Ethan said, yeah, today there's going to be afternoon thunder showers, so just be ready for that. They went back inside, and Ethan closed the door so to keep the air conditioning in. And as they walked in, they both walked over to the granite countertop island like it was the most normal thing for them to do. And Brooke felt warm and comfortable doing it. And Ethan smiled at her and just reached over and gave a peck on the cheek and wrapped his arms around her and gave her a hug. And Brooke stood there and thought, I could do this every day. Boom, done. Alrighty, that is the chapter. So that was 14 minutes and 29 seconds. I'm going to hit done here. And I'm going to rename it. What chapter was this again? Chapter 23. Okay. Rename High Tide chapter 23. And what I do is I save these save these audio clips to my iCloud account, and then I transcribe them using transcription software so I can get that. But this is something I learned in voice to text, is that the new voice app in iOS on the iPhone and the iPad actually gives you a transcript straight away. Now it's not clean it's not as clean as I would like, but it gets the job done. So let's see how many words that was. So copy. So I'm copying this down, and I use Scrivener to do my writing. High tide at Hana. Okay. Chapter 23, morning after. All right. Morning after. Paste. Okay, that's 2,256 words. That's right about where I wanted that chapter to be. And that was for how many minutes? 14 and a half minutes. So I'm going to figure out how long that was. That would actually work very well. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to, let's see, travel and productivity. Okay, here we go. So one of the things is calculating, asking Google, like, oh, you know, how did that go? So say so chapter 23 ended up being 23.5 minutes, and iOS voice recorder gave me 2230 words. How did that do since I'm in the office rather than outside? Because yesterday I actually did a walk and did a 2.5 mile walk and dictated. I ended up with upwards of 8,000 words. I went crazy, but I was out there a long time. It was hot. It was kind of a mistake. It was like, oof, yeah, not feeling super great. Oh, 23. Oh, shoot. Oops. Oh, no. Time was, how long was it? 14.5 minutes and 2230 words. Sorry, typo. Okay. Yeah, let's see what Google says about that. Because I've been tracking all my dictation to make sure that I've got everything in there that I could possibly have. Okay. Just finished chapter 23 dictation. Oops. Dictation. Woohoo. Boom. Okay. Good. So that's 154 words a minute. And that is about right for my in-office dictation. So when I'm outside dictating and walking, I do about 130 minutes because apparently I can't pat my head, rub my belly, walk, talk, chew gum, and dictate all at once. So the office definitely makes me a bit more efficient. I'm not as distracted walking, but I'm sitting, and I don't want to gain too much weight just sitting around. That's one of the dangers of being an author. Like my cup of water here, I'm using Crystal Light just for the flavor, but yeah, I don't want to any more calories than I have to, because one of the dangers of author life is a lot of this with this parked in this, and then all of a sudden I'm snacking, and then whoa, when you look at the scale, so it's a bit of a danger. So testing, told the story, perfect. Yeah, so usually once I correct the dictation, it ends up being about 2,700 words. That's about the target that I'm after. And that was the chapter 23 dictation. I'm going to start doing more of these dictation sessions just to show you what the experience is like. I've still got, let's see, at this rate, 2 more chapters to go. I'm going to do chapter 23 and 24 as we head towards the darkest night where they have their big blow up. And that's all part of the fun. But please stop by again, and thank you very much for watching. Again, check out my link to my romance website, aaronbelsing.com, where you can read about my romance pen name. And then also check out my thriller fiction at aaronrlinsdau.com. It's just part of the deal. I definitely don't hide behind a particular pen name. It's just more for the Amazon algorithm, so it doesn't mix up my romance and thrillers, and then the whole thing gets confused, and we don't want that to happen. So thank you very much for watching, and come again, because I'll be live streaming soon.